My name is Joseph Njoroge Memia. Previously, we talked about my background, my parentage, and my early life after the time when I lost our father in 1948. I told you the story since their migration to Rift Valley, their life up to 1948, and the sudden and unfortunate death of my father in 1948. I told you about two brothers, one real brother, the other one half brother, who came to answer the distress after the death of our father. As I had just reported, when we got the message about the death of my father, the family went to his place of work and they found the body in the police Land Rover, and they were not allowed to come near. He was not unwrapped to be seen by the family. The family was just told that he hanged himself at night with a sheet, bed sheet. And we started wailing, and everybody was screaming. We were told to go home. Well, as we went home, the other siblings, the younger siblings, especially my brother who follows me, Patrick, was already 5 years, but did not get really the concept of whatever was going on. So when people came back and they were still waiting and rolling themselves, could not cope with the sudden news, he is called Patrick Gidenji, and he laughed at them all and he said, "I wonder why all of you are crying. I think you are not normal. Me, I cannot cry unless I stumble on a stone and my toe gets hurt. So why are you crying?" So he did not know exactly what was happening, but that's how it was, and that shows the innocence of the young children. If I can say it in Kikuyu, he said, "Kai inyue mutaraigua wega, niki kiratuma murire inyuothe ona inyue anene na nie ndingirira itari muhinge." So that's why are you all crying and you have not stumbled on anything. So that now is the sudden death. And then people were informed, people were sent at the IRAD to take the message. We could get some people to send, and they brought the information to the closest relatives, some of who are still in Rift Valley in different places. And the immediate brother to my father, the youngest, he came from here, and his half-brother came from Nakuru, and they came to assist the family. It is after that that the employer was asked to allow some time to prepare the foods that were in the galleries and then find out the way to transport it home. As I had told you, then fire broke and burnt everything that we had. It was so unfortunate because the fire was realized at night at around 3, 4 in the night. And it destroyed the whole homestead, so nothing was spared. As we were now prepared to go, we only carried 1 tin of maize and about half tin of peas and broad beans. The half-brother to my father is the one we traveled with, since the actual brother had left a little earlier and had come home to bring the information to everybody else. So he traveled with us. We were walked from Eburu, Dogo, to Giuggiu, where we caught the train, and this time round the train did not bring us to uplands as was the norm with the family traveling. But this time round, our uncle, the half-brother to my father, booked us up to Nairobi. And therefore, as a family consisting of my dear mother, the lady shown just beside me here, the icon of this home, and her co-wife, Wangui. That is Wangui Memia. The co-wife was Wanjiko Memia. The children, the first ones, had already gotten back. Married in 1946, we left her in Eburu. The second born, Wanjiro, later known as Regina Wanjiro Kememia, and then Duta, later known as Mary Duta Karumba, and then myself, my follower, Githinji, now later known as Patrick Githinji Memia, and the last born then, Kariuki, later known as Francis Dominic Kariuki Memia. Our very last born was already in mother's womb and was to be born after coming to Central Province. So we alighted in Nairobi from the train. He led us to Kariako, where buses or taxis, as they were referred to last time, we connected one, and it ferried us all to Kiamwangi. When we go to Kiamwangi, he led us to their big homestead, where my late paternal grandmother, Duta Wadhiga, had a hut. And beside that hut, my father had built a small hut for my brother, who was staying there as he went to school in Kiamwangi College. It is there that we went to stay. The small my brother's hut was so tiny, about 10 by 10, and we all fitted there. The makeshift bed that was there had to be dismantled to allow enough room for those of us that had just come. We used to stay most of the time outside, and when it comes to the time of sleeping, we would spread the dry banana leaves, and then we sleep all on the ground. It was uncomfortable, but we had no choice. It didn't go for long. My enterprising mother decided that we should build a house of our own where we would fit. Before they left for Rift Valley, they were cultivating in some pieces of land that they were shown by their parents, and one of them is at the edge of River Dhara, and she decided to go there. It was grown with waterbuck trees. They were very common then, because there was a factory in Thika which was manufacturing a lot of things from the back of that tree. So she decided that we go and cut posts there, and then we build just across the river. There is a place again where they used to farm before they went to Rift Valley. We borrowed axes and whatever else, just us, the family that had just migrated from Rift Valley, and we went there. The climate was tense since we were not really shown any welcome. Those we expected to show sympathy that were coming after being left behind by our father suddenly didn't seem to share the grief, and so we felt not recognized. And that's why our mother, as the head of the group, decided that we build ourselves a home a little far from the homestead of the big family of Thika. As we went to cut the trees, my paternal grandmother, who was living with my elder brother, found us there, and she was very wild and hostile. She asked us who gave us permission to cut the trees. My mother answered her. She just wanted to build a home to stay in, and she thought she had a right because she used to cultivate in that land, and now that it was grown with waterbuck trees, she thought It was a part of what she would use. Our grandmother shouted and was not welcoming, that we should not touch anything. They did not belong to us, but they belonged to those she was living with since we were living in Rift Valley. My mom wailed also and told her, I thought you would sympathize with us having lost the head of our family, your son, and help us to resettle. She shouted back and said, I don't think I can do that, because where you are, you used not to call me there. And it was said in a way that may sound very bad in Kikuyu. If I would say it, said, Muratema miti moheto no. And my mother said, Deshiritie na ngona kuria ndarimaga to kwi miti tuteme twake ha guikara torutie na handu na ha gukoma. And then the grandma answered, Muheto no, guku gutire kindu kianyu, na miti ino ni ya aria twakoretwo nao, na akigweta maritwa maita kwenda kugweta. Maitu nake akiriraga akimuria, Maitu uguo niguo kuga na ndireciragia ugutunyitaniria na nguo to tuoka tukwirirwo na nigetha tugirie maithori. She answered, Gumunyitaniria na nguo tondu ndirokaga ruguru mugathinjira. That was a sarcasm and insult. And my mother answered, said, even if we did not come and we did not even slaughter for you, we have considered us, we have always considered ourselves as a part of the family, and we thought we would share the grief. In Kikuyu, onongo tutia guthijagira tweciritie tondu guku nikuo tugucoka ni ugutunyitaniria na nguo. Said no and leave all whatever you are doing. Then our mother told us to collect whatever we had, the axes and whatever, and she wailed, and it was also answered back by our senior sisters and the co-wife, and it was heard by some people who were members of a big clan across the river. There were two men who were used to buying trees from the farms there. They cut them down, they peel the water back, they dry it and sell it to the factory in Thika, and the rest of it was cut into firewood, which they would put on the roadside to sell. They came to find out whatever was happening, and when they were informed, and some of all that they were overhearing, since there were shouts, they came and calmed us down, and they told my mother, Wangui tiga kurira, mwako ni ugwaka na horere. That is, Wangui, stop crying. You will build as you had planned, and don't cry. Everything will be in order, and you will be helped. The two of them, one of the was a nephew to that grandmother of mine. The other one was a age mate of my father, and they were circumcised together. They belong to that same lika. They are Shiringi, and therefore they were completely attached to the home. They did not cut down the peeled trees for the firewood as usual, but they offered the trees after peeling the bark. They offered enough for a house. The news spread around, and then people decided that they would help us. Within a week or 2 weeks, the neighbors who were so sympathetic, and even members of the family who answered the distress, helped us. We reveled the place that we wanted to build. It is near the water back and the river, and it was a little hilly. They dug to make it level for building, and within 1 week the house was up and was all done, smeared with mud as usual. The ladies organized themselves and went to the rivers and cut the leads which were used for thatching. Then they thatched, and incidentally, not only they helped to build a big hut, round hut for my mom, they also helped to build another small one, a thingira for the wee young ones, and another one for my mother's co-wife. And therefore, we settled there, and we forgot about the rough and cruel welcome that we were given on arrival. Because of that, we did not have any means of our existence, and therefore my mom and those within the family that were grown, that is my half-mother and my two sisters, they went and enrolled themselves in a European farm quite a distance from here. My elder brother continued with his education. My other siblings stayed with me at home, where we would do the house chores. We would go to the garden. We would fetch firewood. And later on, our industrious mother would buy one goat, then another, and we would still look after those. We would rear a few chickens, and so life continued. They were leaving that place early in the morning at around 5 or early, walking to that place because they had to report on duty before 8 o'clock. In the evening, they were coming late because they were leaving there at 5 or 4, and then they would walk back. As they walked back, whatever they may be having, they passed through Kiamwangi Shopping Center, where they would buy a few things, mostly a little unga, not enough to make ugali, but at times enough only for uji. But we survived on that. They were earning peanuts because they used to pick coffee, and sometimes they would be paid 5 cents after filling one tin. So if you don't get 2 tins, you cannot get 10 cents. And it went on and on until when we later joined to go to accompany them, we were earning about 30 per tin. And by the time we were going to Rift Valley, they were paying about 45 per tin. Now, if I may go back, my mother delivered at the beginning of 1949 to our last-born daughter, who our last-born sister, our last-born sister, who very unfortunately did not see the father, but only found the mother. There are 2 members of our immediate family and among the siblings who I sympathize with so much up to now. One is my elder brother, Peter, who was in Central Province by the time we lost our father, and the news did not reach him immediately until we came back. And the hostility shown by the in-laws also affected him, and he was in school. And because his father had mentioned and written a note to the effect that he should not be stopped from schooling until he himself feels that he has had enough of it. So we worked hard to make him not leave school, but to continue. Therefore, he wasn't much at home. He was mostly in school, and he did not enjoy the family warmth that much. The other one is our dear last-born, Teresia Njeri Moreu, as was known thereafter, who was left unborn by dying father, and we did not secure any record or any photo that would show how her father looked like. She would only think and compare by looking at the brothers of our father, and those others were born with her, the 2 sisters, and then she would imagine how the father looked like. However, life continued, and now those grown-up ones who used to go for work where they were employed, and we would be left at home. For those who are left at home, I was more or less left in charge because my brother was in school. Gedenji Patrick, who follows me, was also with me. We would look after our young sister, who deserved and required a lot of attention. And our other brother, Francis, would assist also in looking after the few animals and other chores within the house. We would go looking for food in the garden. We would go fetching for firewood, and we would also look after our dear young sister. My immediate follower has always been cleaned, very clean and meticulously keeping himself. As I told you earlier, he would not allow himself to sleep near me, lest I would contaminate him with the color that was black, and he didn't like it. He was clean and did his things his own way, and a perfectionist. As he would be left with a baby sister, he would not allow the baby sister to sit properly on the laps, lest she would either pee or poo-poo on him. So he used to keep his legs apart. The baby is kept in the middle there, so if the baby could pee or poo-poo, it will go down but will not affect him. He was such a perfectionist.
You guys did not have pampers?
There were no pampers, there were no even leaves. It may sound crude, but there are no such things. And there were no toilets at all. People used to go to the nearby bush, and since there were many, especially the young ones, didn't have to go very far. And how do you wipe yourself? They used to sit down and you roll yourself the back and you clean with the grass or even sand, whatever there is down there, then you can clear yourself that way. That's the way we used to live. Washing, it was difficult to bring water home to wash. So we were lucky, we were just near two rivers, one of which was very big. We could even swim there. So that's where we used to go. If we were we were not putting on shirts, other than my brother who was going to school. We were having sheets, and we would wash our sheets there. Yeah, until later on when we got shirts, some of the old ones of my brother, and then later on, my mother, following the urge they had and the ardent love for education with the husband, she decided not to forget about it. So she talked to my half-brother or cousin. The name is David Thiga Memia. His father, I had mentioned earlier, was one of the firstborns and was a little older than my father. They had also migrated to Rift Valley, and they were in Sorai. And unfortunately, he died 1 year after my father, and they also were to come back to Central Province. But that firstborn son of theirs had fortunately gone to school through the independent school, then left and joined Catholic schools up to Study 8, after which he went for teacher training college, Kilimambogo, and after qualifying in 1950, he started teaching and was heading a small makeshift school that was built on a plot given by the late Senior Chief Mohoho, the father of the first lady of Kenya. That is where I started schooling, courtesy of that cousin of mine. And then I would leave my two other brothers and the last-born daughter at home. In the afternoon, I go to school, then come back. Very fortunately, as I also had mentioned earlier, we were introduced to writing and reading, me and my elder brother, by our late father. That did not stop there. Our mother insisted always that our brother that we had joined and was already in school was to be teaching us in the evening, and therefore all of us knew how to write and read by the time God gave us a chance to go to school. None of us hardly went to study one, and some of us skipped even study 2 and went on ahead. But by God's grace, we would pass and perform with whoever we joined and whatever class we were taken to.
What's the most fond memory that you remember of your brother while he used to teach you how to study?
If I may say, the brother that used to coach us and teach us how to study, yeah, you asked me how we fared and how our elder brother, whom I said took over from my father in teaching us how to read and write when we came to Central Province to join him. And this was by emphasis of my mother. It fared so well. One, I cannot overemphasize the love he had for each of us siblings. Secondly, the satisfaction he got when the rest of the family, despite the state of poverty, that he joined him. So he now got out of loneliness that he suffered all the time he did not have the family with him. So when we were together, he was so fond of us, was so kind. He's not rough at all, he's very loving, and therefore there was no problem. There was a big contrast considering what we thought was hostility of our father, putting our legs in a basin of cold water and leaving us to do some work as he went to serve the European bush. Our brother would stay with us, would crack jokes, we would play here and there, and therefore it was very interesting, and we got it well. Yes.
Would you say you learned better from your brother or from your father?
Both of them are vital, but I would say the one who planted the seed is our Father, because he is the one who started us, despite the fact that we thought he was torturing us. We later discovered his wisdom and his intent for us not to go through what he was going through, at least to help us change our lifestyle, not to be intimidated, not to be enslaved, but at least one time to be free, independent, and self-controlling and satisfying.
Maybe you can talk about a typical day for you and your siblings.
A typical day, actually, we were to wake up at the time our mom was going to work. As they were leaving home at about 5, it is this time and after we got on our own that we would try to count back and reckon how much our mother put in us and sacrificed to have us the way we are. Sometimes she would wake up earlier, or sometimes no sleep. Sometimes she would even organize to have some maize and beans if she had, instead of leaving us to put it on as she did at times. Sometimes she would wake up early, light fire, and put that food on fire as they leave at around 5, and we would continue looking at it. When it gets ready, we get it out, we eat whatever we had to eat little, and then we keep the rest. At times, they would wake up, go and tell us what to do during the day. We would go to the areas where we were cultivating. If there were ready bananas, we pluck some and come and cook. At times we would dig out the sweet potatoes and cassava and cook or prepare it for the evening meal for everybody. In most cases, they used to come with maize flour from the shopping center, either bought with a little they may have earned that day, or borrowing from the shopkeepers who understood them, and continue paying as they were trusted by the shopkeepers. So that was the way we passed our days. As I had just introduced, my mother felt the zeal of me joining my elder brother by going to school when my sister grew a bit and would be left with my brothers. And that's how I started in a Catholic makeshift school, which had gone up to standard 3. Those days, standard 4 were having a national examination to allow you to standard 5. So the national examinations started in standard 4. Those who are prepared to do the exam were to be properly taught, and the colonialists had made a rule that those who are to sit the exam should not be over 12 years old. Therefore, they were sitting the exam assumingly under the age of 12 and up to 12 years. In my case, I started schooling in 1952 in Standard 2, and immediately the independent churches were closed as the colonial government declared Kenya, and especially Central Province, a state of emergency, and their schools, which were independent schools and churches, were all closed down. Many people who were studying in Kiamwangi, which was a college, and had even some students from East and Central Africa, had to go back to their home places. The local students scattered around. Those who were lucky looked for schools from the missionary schools, and my brother was already in Standard 6 by the time independent schools were closing, and that's the time I was starting schooling in a Catholic makeshift school.
How did they know? How did they know that you were 12 years? Or was there like a way they would tell?
People would declare, because at times they would find out when you started, and most of the students started at around 6 or thereabout. To be found ready to start what they used to call A and B and stand 1 and 2, they would measure, they would assess you by you putting your hand across over your hand like this, and then you put it this way. If you do not reach your ears, you are not ready to go to school. But if you can touch your ears, then you are already able to start schooling. So you young children cannot bring their heads up to here, and then as you grow, you can pull it, and you can stretch it to touch your ears and even beyond. So to go to school, I think, according to the ears, they would know when your hand touches the ear, you are of the school-going age, and then you continue. However, they were not that strict because of the lifestyle, the feeding way of the locals, which was not as expected. Children were not growing very fast. They were not very healthy, other than those who came from well-to-do families. Some were malnutrited, others were just small in size, were lacking some nutrients, and therefore they were generally small in stature.
Was there any school uniforms?
Yes, there were school uniforms. There were school uniforms in the formal schools. Yes.
What of schools for the less fortunate?
There were not many. In this area, there was one of an old man who eventually came from this area and started also a school here. And he was challenged. He had polio and walking on his knees and hands. But I think he had some good volunteers who taught him how to read and write, and he knew about this. He started a small school, just like a nursery, and he taught people. It progressed up to about 33, and such schools did not have uniform. The makeshift school that was given by Chief Mohoho to the Catholic Church through a priest who had come from Mangu and had started another school in a place known as Keriko, still in Katondo North. He moved across this way, and he was given a place to build, and he started that church, that school. That school existed. It had no mandate to do this national examination, so those who got ready for that were to go elsewhere to sit the exam so that they could go to what was called intermediate schools. Intermediate schools started from Third 5 to 6, and then later on to be called primary top, and then up to Third 8. There was even a period when Third 8 was called Form 2, and Third 7 was called Form 1, and Third 6 was called primary top. Me, for one, as I joined there, I moved and started in Third 2. And in 1953, the same priests approached British colonialists. His name was Father Joseph Patrick McGill. He was a deliverer of many of us around this area. Kiamwangi, the former college, was taken as a colonial camp where they housed their askaris who were brought from abroad. We came to learn that they were recruited in Northern Ireland and even Southern Ireland when they were under the British rule, and they were brought here as an army who looked like what we call now youth wingers, but they had the guns, and they were very rough to our people. So they settled in that compound, the former college. There was a big house that was used by the principal, and that's where their senior stayed, who commanded the big camp. All those who were rounded up from different places were locked up there. They had dug very deep trench around the boma that they had made, which was a big one. The trench was about 10 feet deep by 10 feet wide, and they put sharpened sticks at the bottom so that whoever may try to jump there would get pinched and would not go across. And then they put barbed wires all along, out and in. They had built at the corners of the enclosed boma watchtowers, very high, which used to look like what today you call Mulika Mwizi, had a big torch that would be turned from one end to the other to make sure that nobody would approach and nobody would attempt to get in. People are being tortured and killed. Many were killed outside there and even the forest and were brought there. And just below the camp, they decided to make that the burial place where they buried people in a very inhumane and crude manner. They would dig a small trench where they would put 2, 3 bodies, just the way they have been mutilated and killed. They put them together. And many came from all over. When these Johnnies, as they were being called, went out in pursuit of whom they said were Mau Mau terrorists, they sometimes found people in a group, especially the youth, and said they were found administering oath, and they would be shot. Many were killed in a very inhumane manner. There are those who would be hunted near Aberdare's mountains, and some will be shot. They would be tied and pulled behind the Land Rovers along the rough roads, and their parts, some of their parts will be torn and left on the road, scaring and intimidating everybody. However, the determined Africans, especially those who had taken the oath, did not feel it, and they would not hear of it. Some had their brothers, their sons brought in that state, and when they are told that small parts are left are to be buried, even when they passed through, they were, by God's grace, very strong. People used not to cry, but they used to say, may God grant them what they are fighting for. Many died holding soil, because it is soil that they were fighting for that was grabbed by the colonialists. Those who are buried in that shallow graves, some would be pulled out at night by dogs, and as we walk up passing through that place, we will meet pieces of human flesh scattered around, scaring and very unsightly scenes. However, those are type of tortures, intimidations, and humiliations that people went through at the height of emergency. My brother, having come home after the independent schools were closed, stayed at home for almost a year, and there came a time when my mother got so sick she could not work. She could go to a dispensary. Later on, she couldn't manage it. We tried to administer her herbs and roots according to the advice of medicine people we had around, the local medicine people. And finally, we had to find out what is causing this serious illness. I today believe she had pneumonia. She would not breathe properly. She was wheezing and would cough and even sometimes cough blood. We would give her all these, and even to swallow unji was a problem. So we had to go to the medicine people, as I had mentioned in our earlier talk. And since they are so wise, they first find from you all you know about your parentage, your home, your neighbors, and then they make a story as to why you are sick. And when we revealed to them that our late father had left instruction to the effect that my elder brother should not leave school, they all settled on that. That is what is making our mother that sick. And if our brother does not go to school, our mother may not survive.
How did you guys pay the medicine men?
The medicine men, most of whom were neighbors and even relatives, were being paid in kind. They would come and see what there is in the home. We didn't have much. We didn't have animals. We only had a few chicken, and they would demand a chicken. There was no money, so they were paid in kind. They would ask the slaughter. Sometimes they say you have to slaughter an animal to appease the spirits of the gone father and other ancestors. And that would be done looking for an animal, although that was rare. Yes. So, when this was revealed to 3 or 4 medicine people, my mother called my cousin, who was still a headmaster in the school I was in, a Catholic small school known as Gatito Meirine Washarudi. Gatito Meirine Washarudi. It was built of trees and leaves of dry bananas, thatched it, and they were completely makeshift. Now,
Of the school.
huh?
Is that the meaning of the name?
The name of the school was Gatito Meirine. Gatito Meirine Washarudi. It was called so because a half brother of Senior Chief Mohoho had his homestead just near there with his brother, and there was a big homestead, and it's near there that the land given to the priest was. And that is the priest now who approached the colonial government, went through the DO or the DC and governor, and requested to be allowed to run Kiamwangi as a Catholic school and church. And when it was granted, my uncle, who was in that makeshift school, was moved as a headmaster of the new big establishment, the former Kiamwangi College. And he moved with those of us that were there with him in Gatito. And when I joined, now I joined in end of stand 3, and the following year, which was 54, I was ready to sit my CEE, Common Entrance Education. Common entrance exam. You want a national one? It's only those who pass that exam that were given chance to join intermediate, and they were posted there by the DEO, District Education Officer. I passed by God's grace,